Disclaimer. Lifeless, Beyond Death, Reborn Season 1 and onward are all books written for a purely adult audience. It is dark, sexual and graphic. If it would happen in real life, it'd probably happen in the series. Death and crime is a natural occurrence in this world. So before you read and/or listen, expect the worst to happen. And know that this is a very dark series. It is not intended for the faint of heart or even those with a weak stomach. If you are not at least 18 or older, it is advised that you do not read or even listen this series. And if you are easily offended or religious, it is advised you not continue. Thank you for your time. Prologue. It is said that God created all things, but many often ask the question of who created God. The answer remains the same. God has simply existed. But if God has simply existed, then what if there were a higher power exceeding that of God? Though this higher being has been forgotten, and its story removed from history, its legend was so great that another lesser being took its place and made its own history as the darkness. So, having been forgotten, removed from history, and its name stolen, the true darkness chose to live among the mortals. But before we get into the story, let's explain the history of the forgotten god of darkness. Long ago, long before even heaven itself had come into existence, there existed a race of supreme beings who for the most part wiped each other out until only 3 remained, and they decided to create a planet together and eventually created a race similar to what we know as humans. However, they were imperfect and therefore were destroyed, and eventually the 3 supreme beings fought each other until one of them had devoured the other 2. Eventually another being came and introduced himself as God and asked the being its name, and it said its name was Umbara, and then bestowed its power upon God, who then created heaven, and Umbara created the angels of whom were to serve God. And as God began to create the vast solar systems, Umbara decided to become balanced. Umbara's power was feared and respected even by God, and for years, some of the angels plotted against Umbara. One day, Umbara created for itself 2 physical forms, which were an angel-like body with wings of pure darkness and a massive sword. During the days that God was creating the humans, the archangel Lucifer, along with 4 other angels, convinced Umbara to meet with him. And during this meeting, Lucifer stole Umbara's sword and plunged it through his heart. As Umbara lay dying, he merged his being with the first human bloodline. In doing so, he was able to stay alive to a certain extent. However, he became corrupted long before finding a suitable host. After 4,000 years of basically being somewhere between life and death, Umbara came across a young prince whose brother had betrayed him on the battlefield, running his own spear through his chest. Umbara acted quickly, appearing in corporeal form, and spoke to him saying, "Do you wish to live?" The answer was clear. The prince agreed to become his host. Umbara explained that he could only keep him alive so long as the spearhead remained in place. After collecting himself, the young prince made his way back to the castle of which was his home, so that he may confront his brother. However, when he confronted his brother, Umbara took control and placed a curse upon him that would make him immortal and unable to produce children, saying, "Dante, as punishment for your sins, you shall never know the embrace of death, nor shall you ever beget a child. If you adopt children, they shall die within 7 days." Before anything more could happen, Cain, the host, would remove his spear from his chest, meaning to commit suicide. In the year 1918, Cain would awaken within a stasis pod in a living doll factory, and after shattering the glass and escaping, he would meet an attractive young woman whom would later become his lover. Later, after certain events leading to him regaining lost memories, he would be kidnapped by a highly advanced living doll by the name of Luna, despite having used some of his awakened abilities. After weeks of being held hostage, he would break free of his prison as he regained the last of his memories, and he would then head to the throne room of the castle he found himself in. Upon entering the throne room, he was greeted by Dante, who by now had earned the title of the Tainted Emperor, and had created the living dolls and fought as well as had been the cause of many wars for many generations. Dante would tell him that this would be their final battle, and Cain would manifest a sword using Umbara's power. Cain would finish off his brother after an intense battle by slicing off his head, and after taking his brother's sword as a trophy, would regain the memories of Umbara himself, causing him to fully grasp the situation at hand. It was not Cain who had awakened back in the stasis pod, but Umbara. And so Umbara, having been fully awakened, and now wielding his other half of which was the sword he had created, he would go on to spread corruption and despair throughout all of the 5 realms. When the sun blew up, he replaced it with a false sun created from his essence. However, just before the actual end of the world, he suddenly vanished. Prologue. End.